Good morning, class. Today we are going to touch with the second topic of chapter 9, forces and laws of motion. Earlier we have gone through the point balanced and unbalanced force, and also we have studied about the definition of force. And we have also seen some example related to balanced and unbalanced force. Now we are moving to the next topic, and that is first law of motion. It is the third page from your NCERT. Page number 116 is that. And this is topic 9.2, the force laws for the first laws of motion. Force का part हम finish कर चुके हैं, and now we are going to switch on the first law of motion. You know motion, what the motion is. If an object changes its position with time, we say that object is in motion. And if it doesn't change with its position with respect to time, then we say that the object is at rest. Now we are going to explore this motion concept using some laws. By observing the motion of the object on an inclined plane. Inclined plane means a plane which has some inclination with respect to the ground. Just see from the figure 9.5, a part is there, where we have seen that there is a slope or inclined plane with respect to the ground. ठीक है, जिसपे आप एक you can see that a marble is left from that top of that plane and it is rolling downward. So that particular is called inclined plane. So by observing the motion of an object on an inclined plane, Galileo, the famous scientist is there, was there, the Galileo. His actual name is Galileo Galilei. Galileo deduced that the object moves with a constant speed when no force acts on them. In simple word, we can say that when there is no extra force or unbalanced force acting on the object will move with a constant speed or a fixed speed. He also observed that when the marble rolls down on an inclined plane, its velocity increases. He also noted that when the marble is coming to the near to the ground, its velocity is much greater than that of the at the end of the top. That means when the object is at position top of the inclined plane, it has a smaller velocity or maybe zero. But when it comes to the bottom of the inclined plane, the velocity of the object is going to be rise. The marble falls under the unbalanced force of gravity as it rolls down and attain a definite velocity by the time it reaches to the bottom. It means that when marble falls under the unbalanced force means यहाँ पे आपके जो force apply होगे that is unbalanced force, because there is some kind of friction between that rolling object and the inclined surface. अगर आप एक wooden surface भी assume करते हैं, if you assume that this is a wooden surface, then there is also some kind of friction between the marble and the inclined surface. So there is unbalanced force of gravity as it rolls down. There is also the concept of gravity, which is an opposing force acting in the upward direction. It rolls down and attains a definite velocity by the time it reaches to the bottom. Its velocity decreases when it climbs up as shown in the figure 9.5b. In figure 9.5c, it shows that the marble resting on an ideal frictionless plane inclined on both sides. So to make the concept more firm, I am going to play a video that will help you to understand the concept.
Laws of motion by Galileo Galilei. According to Galileo, object moves with a constant speed when no forces act on them. This means if an object is moving on a frictionless path and no other force is acting upon it, then the object would be moving forever. That is, there is no unbalanced force working on the object. Let us explain with the help of an activity. Take two equal size cardboards, place it against each other that they make equal inclination with the table. Assume that both surfaces are frictionless. Now take marble and release it from the inclined plane of the left side. You notice that the marble rolls down and moves up on the inclined plane on the right side. Now think about how far it moves along the second plane. Well, the slope of both the surfaces are same. Hence it moves the same height from which it is released. Now decrease the inclined plane on the right side and release the ball again. What do you see? It traveled large distance to reach the original height. We can keep on doing it, but what does happens when the slope of inclined plane eventually reduces to zero? That is, makes a horizontal. The marble will continue to travel forever until it reaches its original height. But it is impossible because all ideal conditions should be zero.
You that when the marble is rolled down from an inclined surface and the same kind of inclined surface, the same inclination and same made up of same material is placed nearby to that, the marble which lift up on the inclined surface B with the equal height. But when the inclination of the second pillar can be reduced by some distance, then you see that the speed of the ball is going to be increased and also it covers the larger distance. At the point when this inclination is reduced to zero, suppose this is the first inclination, second, third, and the last. And we have taken at the last, the inclination becomes zero. That means you have removed that inclined surface from there. So the ball will comes down with increasing speed, and after that the speed remains constant. It is the assumption taken by the Galileo that when the object comes to the ground, whatever speed it is achieved, the object will continue to move with that speed and will never stop. So from this point, the Galileo argued that when the marble is released from the left, it would roll down the slope and go up to the opposite side of the same height from which it is released. If the inclination of the plane on the both sides are equal, then the marble will climb the same distance that it covers during the rolling down situation. That means the case when the angle of the two sides are same, we can say that the object or that marble will cover the equal distance. If the angle of the inclination of the right side plane is gradually decreased, look at this particular situation. First angle is you assume to be about 70 degree, then it is reduced to 60 degree, then it is reduced to less than 40 degree or about 40 degree. So the inclination is going to be reduced by some amount and finally it reaches to zero. When the angle of the inclination of the right side plane is gradually decreased, then the marble would travel for the distance till it reaches the original height. If the right side plane were ultimately made horizontal, that is, the slope is reduced to zero, the marble would continue to travel forever, trying to reach the same height that it was released from. Means it covers an equal height if the inclinations are equal. And the unbalanced force on the marble in this case is zero. We assume that unbalanced force is zero because if the unbalanced force is present, then it must not cover the same height. अगर उसने same height cover किया, that means there is an unbalanced force which is taken to be zero. There is no extra force which is retarding the present force. It is suggested that the unbalanced or the external force is required to change the motion of the marble, but no net force is needed to sustain the uniform motion of the marble. Now, this point is to be taken in the consideration that whenever there is a unbalanced force or the external force, we say that it is to change the motion of the object. If the object is in motion, it changes into the stop condition, rest condition, and when it is rest, the unbalanced force make it to motion. But if an object is already in motion, uniform motion, then there is no external force needed to keep it in continue. If the object has uniform motion, then there is no need of any external force to keep it in continue with the same kind of motion. In practical situation, it is difficult to achieve a zero unbalanced force. In practical utility, if we consider about the unbalanced force to be zero, then it is not possible. because somehow the kind of forces are present which retard your type of motion. So we can't consider that unbalanced force is zero in the daily life. This is because of the presence of the frictional force acting that opposes the direction of the motion. This is the one of the common term that we can use, that frictional force. This kind of force is present everywhere. Whenever we are walking on the roads, whenever we are playing some games, like carom जब हम play करते हैं, then there is also friction force. And when we are like running, there is also friction between our body and the particles of the air. So the friction force is everywhere that will try to resist our kind of motion, or we can say that try to oppose the motion or the direction of motion. In practice, the marble stop after traveling some distance. The effect of the frictional force may be minimized by using a smooth marble. Friction force को reduce possible है, but it cannot be can make taken to be zero. To minimize the friction by using the smooth marble surface and the smooth plane and providing a lubricant on the top of the plane, just like oiling, greasing. If we do that, then that polished surface will reduce the effect of the friction also. So coming back to this picture, I think this picture is made clear with the help of video, and this particular kind of picture may be asked as a CCT type question or that optional based question. Regarding that, the question might be like, in which situation that the object is in uniform motion, in which particular case you can say that it covers an equal distance, at which position the marble have maximum speed, at the top or the bottom of the inclined face. This kind of question may be asked. So such a question I will also put in that homework also for the next time. Now, the Newton further studied Galileo's ideas on the force and motion and presented three fundamental laws. Actually, the Newton is the next scientist which studied about the idea of the Galileo, but he is a little bit with a different thinking. Galileo suggests that the object will keep its motion uniform if there is unbalanced force is zero. That means if there is no external force that resists the kind of motion, the object will continue move with the same speed. But the Newton has a different thinking. Newton studied the Galileo's idea of the force and motion and gives a new fundamental laws, that is actually three in counting, and governs the motion of the object. These three laws are called the Newton's law, and they are categorized as Newton's first law of motion, Newton's second law of motion, and Newton's third law of motion. First of all, we have to go through the first law of motion, which states that an object remains in a state of rest or uniform motion in a straight line unless compelled to change the state by an applied force. In simple words, if an object is in moving condition, it remains in the same condition, or if it is at rest, it remains at rest in a straight line unless compelled to change its state by applied a force. Means the object will remain in its present state of motion, whether it is actually in motion or at rest, in a straight line motion until an external force applied on them. Means if the external force is taken to be zero, then object is not going to change its state of motion, either it is rest or in motion. But when the unbalanced force is applied, that unbalanced force may create its kind of motion. Object अगर study है like rest पे है, it may start in moving condition. If the object is moving, then it may be come back to the rest position. Just like if we suppose that there is a bicycle or that there is a tire and it is like vertically उसको place किया है and it is in rest state. But if we take a stick and just push it, then it will start rolling. The tire start rolling. That shows कि if there is no external force, it is not moving. But when we apply a push on that, that means we are applying an external force. Then the object comes in motion. Now the object state originally is at rest, but now it is in motion. So this is one of the example that we can say about the first law of motion. In another word, all the objects resist a change in their state of motion. This is the second definition of the first law. First law can be described by different ways. The first definition is given in this paragraph, and the second is also there. All objects resist a change in the state of motion. The tendency of undisturbed object to stay at rest or to keep moving with the same velocity is called inertia. So there is a term which is called inertia that comes in a picture. It is a qualitative term. It is not a quantitative term. Now the term qualitative and quantitatives are different. Qualitative means you are studying about the quality of the term or the quality of the physical thing that you are going to study. It is inertia, not the quantity. You are not measuring that. Inertia cannot be measured. Inertia को हम measure नहीं करते कि that it is measured in some kind of units also. But when we are talking about the quality, that means we are about the character of that material. So whenever we are talking about the inertia, we are studying about the qualitative term, not the quantitative term. We have nothing to do with the quantity of the matter. We have to do with the quality. In simple word, inertia is related to mass somehow. In simple word, mass and inertia are related, but mass is a measured quantity and it is a quantitative quantity. Inertia is not that. That is why the first law of motion is also called the law of inertia, because the inertia is a kind of property that shows that if an object is in state of rest, it remains at rest. If it is in motion, it remains in motion. That means object will resist its kind of inertia. Whatever inertia it has, inertia due to motion, inertia due to rest, or inertia due to direction, it will remains with the same. So today's class is over now. Now the time for recapitulation. What is the force that is related to the previous topic we have studied? Along with that, there is another question: what is balanced and unbalanced force? From the present scenario, the main question is that what is the Galileo-Galilei assumption regarding the laws regarding the force and motion of an object? And the next is, what is the first law of motion? I'm stopping my video here.